Right, welcome to this full council meeting. So I think we are all in attendance, either online or in the room. So I will open with karakia, kia tau mai te maramatanga, kia tau mai te rangi Māori, ki tau mai te kaha me te aroha mō tēnei kaupapa hui e tai ki e. We have no apologies because everyone is here. Are there any declarations of interest? We have no public forum. So that brings us to the first item on the agenda, and that is development of financial contributions policy. Riley.
Good morning. So this is bringing the final version of the policy to you for adoption, reflecting the decisions made at the deliberations meeting, which was confirming most of the changes that were consulted on and a revised approach to the stormwater detention discount. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Briley. It's open for questions and or moving and seconding. Move Councillor Mailing. Is there a seconder? Councillor McKenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Well done, Briley. I suspect that may be the shortest report of the day, but you have set a good benchmark. So next is the adoption of the schedule of fees and charges. So Emily, Alan and David online in relation to refuse related questions and or information. So Emily, I'll come over to you.
Kia koto. So we're going to adopt the schedule of fees and charges. The changes made in deliberations have been put into this full schedule. To note, there are some minor changes that have been made since that, which are in part 5 of my report. And David is here to speak on some changes to waste fees since deliberations.
Okay, thanks, Emily. David, I'll come over to you before I open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillor. It's just a minor change to the recommendation for sale of prepaid rubbish bags. Following the discussion at deliberations to move to a 15% increase, we informed our contractor who advised a revised wholesale price, which has meant that if we adopted the changes that we made, in that deliberations meeting, then there'd be a small loss on each rubbish bag sold. So we're proposing a revised fee of $6.40 for each small rubbish bag rather than $6 as discussed in deliberations, and $6.70 rather than the $6.50 that was discussed in deliberations. Happy to take questions on any of that.
Okay, thanks, David. It's open for questions. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. Question perhaps for you, David. At one time we did have an incentive that the smaller bags were cheaper substantially than the larger ones to try and encourage people to minimise their waste. 30 cents doesn't seem like it would incentivise anyone to use the small bag at all now. So I'm just wondering, have we gone away from that logic, for the want of a better word?
Thanks. Through the chair. In some ways, yes, it reflects the actual cost of stopping a truck, a person getting out, picking up the bag and throwing it into the vehicle. So the actual difference in weight is often very, very minor. You might remember a long time ago, council decided to only offer the small bags, but we lost a large part of the market share. And so some years later, we introduced the larger bags. They're about a 50-50 sale of the two of them. Perhaps a little more of the big bags, but no, it's a reflection of the actual cost of providing the service.
Have we given any thought, through you, Mr. Mayor, any thought to just having one size bag? Right, the difference seems so minimal. I guess it's someone living alone may have use for a small bag, but
yeah. Well, we do still sell both bags in reasonable numbers. As I say, it might be something like 60% large and 40% small. I'd need to check the figures, but there's no extra cost to us of offering both options, and so we're happy to continue.
Thank you. And just in relation to the waste minimisation that we talked about previously, all of those that were changes that were affected budgetary wise have been incorporated into the fees.
That's correct. Yes, that's right.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to move, Mr. Mayor, with those answers, the recommendations on starting on page 93 and right through.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Bryant. So we got Councillor Mailing, then Councillor Greening.
So just a question in the waste minimisation, David. I've recently been to the Richmond Resource Recovery Centre and observed and used that trial that you're doing for the building material. Is that going to continue? Because it certainly worked well.
Yeah, at this stage, we're looking to run that through to December, and you'll remember that there's a review of charges proposed coming back to Council in November. As part of that, we'll look at whether there should be some level of charging, because at this stage it's a trial and we're not charging for construction and demolition waste. We'll come back with a recommendation on whether there should be a charge that could be perhaps half the mixed waste disposal or some other charge.
That makes sense to me. It probably saved me $100. So you could have charged me and I would have been quite happy. So, and it turned old gypboard into gypsum, as I understand it. So I'm happy to second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, I know this is pretty much a formal process, but being consistent, I will be calling a division over this. I don't support where council is going with its overall strategy of just increasing its revenue from ratepayers. In this case, well above the inflation rate, well above the capital index inflation rate. In my opinion, council over these last 3 years has failed to address the fundamental problems that this council is facing. And this is just part of the annual plan, which is also another revenue grab. So I won't add any more than that, but I will be calling a division and I will be opposing these extraordinarily large rate fees and charges increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just got a question for clarification. In 8.3 of the report, it refers to the fee changes actually generating a 24.4 million in revenue, which is a 5% increase when we're actually increasing the fees by 10%. So I'm sure that there are reasons for that, but it would be just quite good to just get an idea of how that works, that we actually end up with 5% less than the increase.
Yeah, Matt, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the 10% was not necessarily applied to everything. Something like the solid waste is a good example. It was based off the costs, etc., what we needed to recover things. So certainly, perhaps 50-60% were done like that, but the other 40% weren't necessarily moved up to by the 10%, if you like. So it was sort of horses for courses. A lot did get moved, but not all of them.
Okay, thanks. I've just got one more question. Is that okay? That is, could you just remind me about where the carbon credits, the sale of the carbon credits, what that was actually given towards? Because there was quite a bit of debate about the unencumbered carbon credits.
So that
that is actually not this report.
No,
that's the other
that'll be the
annual plan.
Yes, yep. So Matt obviously have an answer to that question when we get to that item. Is there anything further in terms of the schedule and fees and charges? Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. Dog control fees. I fully understand that these have been passed through the council system and adopted. But I, like other councillors around here, getting a fairly full inbox from people who are complaining about the dog fees. And if you've got 3 dogs, there's a lot of money involved. I've been asked by one ratepayer, Nancy Hayes from Brightwater, to ask the following questions of the staff. First one was that she asked that the dog registration fee system be reviewed, focusing on rewarding discounted fees for owners of good behaviour dogs.
So that's really a question for us.
Yes, correct.
As opposed to staff.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, could we ask the staff to, and sometime in the future, review the methodology of arriving at dog registration fees?
So we had that conversation during the deliberations, and there were a number of examples given of other areas where that is the system that they run in terms of headline fees, discounts for certain things. And I think we did indicate at that point that next time the fees are reviewed, which will be 10-year plan or annual plan in 12 months' time, new council, that the council did wish to consider those sort of options. So,
do we have confirmation of that, please, Mr. Chairman?
I'm not sure Shannon's probably the person, but we'll note it down in terms of the conversation, and we can get confirmation post the meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I guess my question is, and I support that we work through a system which has user pays, but what I grapple with is that we have increased our fees that we're going to go out with and our charges, but it doesn't really reflect on the rates that we're going to be passing in the annual plan. And it, well, I know you say it does, but we go out and we say we're doing a 10%. Councillor Butler raised it. I highlighted it when I was doing my pre-reading around how we've got here a 5% increase, and it's going to expected to generate 24.4 million. I hope that we can share that story out to our communities, because they perceive that it's 10% across the board, a blanket 10%, because that's potentially how most people read it. I'm not saying it's a, I'm not endorsing where Councillor Greening says that it's a revenue grab, but it seems a bit more fair that we're charging our customers that the user pays to keep our other rates down. But I struggle to see how that's reflected when we look at the annual plan that's before us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the answer to that is the figure that we're considering in the next report would be substantially higher if we were still recovering the revenue via rates as opposed to fees and charges. I think what this highlights is that for those who are around in the next term of council, when rates capping is almost inevitably brought in, the options, if you think it's been difficult this year to balance the rates versus the fees and charges versus development contributions and try and get all of that packaged up in a way that as best as possible reflects who's using the services and who should be paying for them, and utilising the user pays principle, as you highlighted. If rates are capped, then these conversations are going to just be that much more difficult for subsequent councils should they wish to, where they have an option, continue to deliver the service. But if you think about most of the things we're talking about, we don't have an option to not register, to get out of registering dogs, for example. We can't just, we're not registering dogs now. Well, I don't think we have that option. It would be tempting to pass it off to somebody else. send everyone's dog registrations to the minister. But it is a massive conundrum, and I think this last 12 months and these decisions absolutely reflect how difficult it is if you want to maintain the service level, which we kind of committed to at the start, to keep the services, whether that's libraries, parks and reserves, etc. We considered cutting some services and decided, not ideal. But yeah, 100% take your point. It's hard to explain to people that fees and charges are going up and rates are going up. And that somehow we've managed to do a good job out of all of that. I get how difficult it is to do. Right, Councillor Dowler, and then I'll look to put the resolution.
Yeah, can I just make a comment? So
yeah.
You look at the hurt, everything like this, but this is a user pay scenario here. In the real world at the moment, I've been watching the pump prices since about 8 days ago. You look at the contractor there for picking up the rubbish bags and stuff, and he wants a little bit more. Price of diesel's gone up 6 cents a litre in 4 days. So, everybody's going to hurt. Even the contractors are probably going to hurt unless they can come back and get a review later on. The AA say this won't happen, but it is. And someone said to me the other day they can see the fuel $3 a litre probably in the next 3 weeks because of the hurt that's happening over the way. So we're going to be smacked around by that stuff as well. Electricity bills. We have pumping stations. Okay, we do have a contract. I do understand that, but just the poor old clock tower in Motueka, it's gone up $25 a month. We use $2 worth of power a week on that clock tower. The rest of it is the supply charges from Network Tasman and stuff. So, we've got to be realistic that user pay, not everybody pays because not everybody uses. So it's got to be spread fairly. So I have to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Dowler. I will come to Deputy Mayor Bryant for his right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. Just a quick right of reply here. It's either the evil between fees and charges or more on your rates. Personally, I support user pay, and people that are using the services should pay the appropriate charges. But alongside that, I'd just like to thank the staff for the effort they've put into this. It's been quite a challenging year and process to do this, particularly Emily. Thank you for all the work you've done here. I'm sure that's been a learning curve, well and truly, and also all the others in the team, David, Alan, John and Strain and everyone who all had input into it along the way. Thank you very much to the team that's been doing it and the leadership team that's led them through the process to get us to where we are today. Because without this revenue, we wouldn't be able to operate. So it's important that we get this done today. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. So as Councillor Greening has requested, the vote will be via division. So I'll come across to Robin to call out the names.
Mayor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Dakey.
For.
Councillor Dowler.
For.
Councillor Ellis.
For.
Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Kinnamonth.
For.
Councillor McKenzie. For. Councillor Mayling.
For.
Councillor Maru.
For.
Councillor Shilkres.
For.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Mayor King.
For.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. So the next item is the adoption of the annual plan. So Alan, you're staying put. Matt, staying put as well. And Amy, welcome. I will come over to you as Amy, you leading the, yep. So I will come over to you just to do the introduction and then open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Morena, kia ora koutou. Finally, we're here. It's been a long process for us all since an unacceptable rates revenue increase of 13.5% was forecast last October, driven by higher than expected costs, including interest, depreciation, and central government levies and compliance costs. There's no surprises with this annual plan 2025-26. It gives effect to the decisions you made on 30th of April and in your 4th of June deliberations to minimise the cost to ratepayers. In this annual budget, we've identified savings by pulling back our activities and services where we believe the impacts on the community will be acceptable and further prioritised our capital spend to what is most important for the district. The consequential rates revenue increase in the annual plan 2025-2026 is 8.9%, excluding growth. This is slightly higher than the proposed 8.8% increase in the consultation document and is the net result of the changes set out in paragraph 2.4 of the report, including reinstating funding to retain the current operating hours and services at the Motueka and Richmond libraries. Note that this rates revenue increase is inconsistent with the dynamic rate cap of 5.2% in the Council's financial strategy, largely due to increased or additional costs outside the Council's control. However, this increase provides a good benchmark for future rates revenue increases. Net debt remains within the revenue ratio limits in the financial strategy. We'd like to acknowledge that setting the 2025-26 budgets was extremely challenging. Significant cuts to controllable budgets were needed to offset rising costs, for example, depreciation and interest, while staying within the 8.9 rates revenue increase set. As a result, our budgets are under intense pressure and carry a high level of risk with little to no capacity to absorb unexpected costs or new requests. These budget limitations and pressures will be important considerations for both elected members and staff as the Council implements the annual plan 2025-26. Over to you to consider the annual plan adoption. Happy for any questions. I think Matt would like to add a further point.
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
I'll come across to you.
Thank you. Just to come back to the question from Councillor Butler, on the 30th of April, the Council resolved to sell the $3 million of unencumbered credits. That transaction has occurred, and we've actually got the dollars in the bank, so to speak. In that resolution, we talked about it being sheeted home predominantly to the Three Waters and Roading, where we were expecting the deficit to occur, if you remember, from the current financial year. There was a subsequent resolution, but I cannot find it in the time I've got, so I'll have to come back to you. But I think we got more specific in a later report about where that was actually going to be used. So after this meeting, I'll come back to councillors on whole with that. But essentially, the use of that $3 million meant the deficit was lower, so we didn't need to rate as much in 25-26 to recover what was $6.5 million is now $3.5 million, if you like.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that answer. And I think people probably, there are people who are quite interested in how we use, what we put the revenue towards from selling carbon credits. So I think it's really good if we can be really transparent with the community about that.
Yeah, so certainly through the mayor again, it certainly is. It's going to be sheeted home to reduce the rate impact, or has been sheeted home to get to the 8.9% that you have in front of you today.
Thank you. Other questions or moving or seconding? Deputy Mayor Bryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, one of these important things we need to do to have the revenue coming in, and a lot of the increases, I'll just flick through it and thought about this last night when I saw what someone was previously paying for their PAN charge and what they're now going to pay. A lot of the increase is driven by water-related activities, the water charges, the wastewater charges, the Waimea Dam charges on properties. All of those things water-related are very important for the district and costly, so they are largely the drivers of this, but it's just one of those things that happens to be the catalyst for so much of the 8.8%. But with that, I'm happy to move the resolutions that were required.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bryan. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you. I'm happy to second the resolution. I've certainly tried to front foot the discussion in the community forums that I've been to with regards to the 8.9 and what that actually means, because we know that it's going to land quite differently depending on what is the bundle of services that you get from the council. And I think that how we communicate that is actually really important for people to understand it. So taking that into account, I'm happy to second the resolution. Thank you. And actually, I too would like to thank the staff, the managers, the leadership team, and everybody who's been involved. I mean, honestly, it's been a huge amount of work to get to this point. And whilst we'd all probably rather that it was zero, it's a bit like a pound of butter, isn't it? We can't really fight it at this point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad rates aren't going up quite as much as a pound of butter has in the last 12 months. I got Councillor Maru, Councillor Manning, Councillor Greening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be supporting the resolution that's been moved and seconded. I guess I probably have one regret through this whole process, and that one regret is the amount of work that we have actually done and staff have done, that we've workshopped and done behind closed doors. Because it seems like the resolution will pass very, very shortly, as have the other two, and it looks like we've just done this in 15 minutes and struck the rate. Well, oh my goodness, if people just realise the thousands of pages and the hours that we've read and the discussions we've had, it would be really helpful to the insight. And taking the 8.9% and some of the urban Motueka properties I saw, it's probably closer to 10% where there's water and wastewater. So, you know, it's not an 8.9% across the board. So we'll probably get some feedback in our local establishments of socialising in Motueka around 8.9 or 10%, whatever that is. But strangely enough, I've had feedback from both people, from families, particularly young families who are struggling to survive now and are working hard, both parents, and the rate increase, they will struggle, but they will pay it. But I've also had conversations with people that would be not happy, but willing to pay more if they had more surpluses of extended libraries and swimming pools and bits and pieces. And one of our community stalwarts in Motueka still advocates for us to take on more debt to get the work done that we need to do. So I just want to recognise there isn't an overwhelming support of less rates, more rates, happy with rates, don't want rates. And in our submissions and the library hours didn't surprise me in terms of what people see and can touch from council they really value. So there was absolute savings in one part, but our community said, actually, those that took time to submit, we really value these and we will pay for them. So I guess that's the difficulty of this process, is that I haven't found one person that agrees with anything. Around the people that surround me, I haven't found a consensus that they'll agree with any decision I've been part of. Some will support it, some will go, what the heck were you doing? And some will go, you just mad and need to step down. So I guess that's the challenge we have. And I guess the challenge we all have going forward with staff and whoever's sitting around this table is the monitoring of the financial processes and controls. And hopefully they are forward projected, not 3 months late, and there's early warning for elected members where they're going to be variances, because that's probably the most frustrating bit, is that often by the time we get notification of where budgets are going, it's too late. And we've seen where we've gone to reduce services, we've had some choices, the community said, no, don't do that, but at least we've had the discussion and the choice. So yeah, with that, I will be supporting this. And I suspect if I beat Councillor Greening, let's just do it by division, Mr. Mayor.
What a good idea, Councillor Maru. I suggest we will probably do it via that method of voting, yes. Councillor Mayling, Councillor Greening, Councillor Walker.
Well, I'll just echo the previous speakers very briefly that a huge amount of work from everyone around this table and in the room. The impact will be uneven, as Councillor Maru said, depending whether you get all your services. If you're a rural person, you provide your own stormwater and wastewater, it's a lot less. But we have an obligation to maintain our infrastructure. And one of the big increases is actually depreciation going forward. But I do take the point about monitoring budgets. When I managed a relatively large budget of about 70 million for the government, I knew exactly at the end of each month where I was, whether I was over or under. And my question was always, why? What is the difference? What has made the difference? So that's what I'll be asking the CEO going forward, that we monitor our budgets, and if there's a problem, we know why early. So that goes back to Matt and our systems as well, which aren't as good as they could be. But we need, if there is a difference or something is more expensive or something is less, we need to know early. So then we don't end up with a hole. Simple as that. And I will be supporting this. You're never popular when you have to make decisions that things have to go up. We're not here to be popular. We're here to do a job for our region. And that's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Mayling. Councillor Greening.
Thank you. Thank you for Councillor Mayling for outlining how hard it is. I suppose I've found it pretty hard as well. I certainly thank Councillor Maru for calling division, because that's what I was going to do, so well anticipated. Thank you very much. I just want to respond to some of the earlier comments and just make some observations. I've made a lot of these during the deliberations hearing, and I'm sure people can go back to that if they want to see a more thorough analysis of what I was talking about and why I am voting against these fee increases and this annual rates take. For me, and just responding to Councillor Maru's observations, I found this process through the LTP and these subsequent annual plans, which we were constantly adjusting, frustrating because we weren't addressing the fundamental drivers of costs in the organisation. Instead, we were offered doggy bag savings and other bits and pieces, tinkering around the edges. So I have a question before I jump in, which is, can staff just quickly clarify, because they make mention of it in the report, rates increases are 8.8%, 8.9%, excluding growth. So what is the average increase including growth?
Matt. 10.3%. I think we're allowing 1.4% for growth this year, or in 25-26.
So just for clarity, the revenue increase that council expects is 10 point something.
Yeah.
1.4% is growth, i.e. the increase in assets across the region, whether that's new properties, new development, whatever, that is contributing more funding. It's not the rate increase to individual properties that is 10.3. It is the revenue figure. This is one of the things we always not necessarily get confused, but is not necessarily that clearly explained in the public, is the figures we're talking about is increases in revenue, part of which is a rating increase on existing ratepayers, i.e. 8.9 on average, and part of which is new revenue coming from growth.
That's correct. Essentially, we're expecting our rating base to actually increase, as it does each year. Historically, it's been higher than the 1.4% that we're currently expecting, but that figure was lowered actually from the LTP based on better information from I think it was actually from Dwayne's team by Briley that we decided to reduce it a little bit. But yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Good explanation. Thank you, Councillor Greening. Carry on.
So the argument was made earlier around fees, that if we don't increase fees, then the annual rates go up. And that logic just assumes that you're not decreasing your costs. And that's the real failure here around the table. The increase is well above inflation, well above capital inflation costs, and above the LTP forecast. Like the increase to fees and charges, this is effectively a revenue grab because we haven't been able to really get to the heart of what is driving our cost increases. We've failed to address the spending program, both operational and capital. Many of these community projects, which are folded into this annual plan and long-term plan, are at the bottom of the dam. And there are people around this table who told the community that they would keep the dam on time and on budget. And they didn't, and we haven't. And that was really a failure to understand how the dam was costed. But we do have the ability to respond to those blowouts by looking at our fundamental costs. And I don't believe we have done that. I found it certainly frustrating, a refusal to look at the core organisational costs and operational costs and where we need to spend and where we really don't need to spend. But apparently we're still embarking on a Tapware hub, which is quite controversial in that community, and we really don't need to go there, especially with the costs and rate increases that we're throwing to the community. Council's failed really to respond, in my opinion, to the cost blowouts by adjusting its spending. It's continuing to stick its head in the sand, apply this logic that if we don't increase here, we have to increase elsewhere without actually turning to more fundamental issues. It is unaffordable, well pointed out by Councillor Murray. This is unaffordable for many ratepayers. The rates take over the last 3 years is, including growth in that, is rapidly going towards 30%. That's extraordinary. That's a complete failure of this council to rail in its costs. This plan risks and undermines not only that, but it risks and undermines stormwater maintenance in Richmond. I mean, Waimea Village residents should be probably concerned about the trajectory of this plan. Our financial position is now a high risk, according to last week's full council meeting. I mean, this should be a red flag, but no, we just keep on going. The debt trajectory continues to climb as council fails to address its core spending problems. We are throwing our community under the bus from a failure to address our spending. And lifting debt thresholds is not managing spending. It's sticking your head in the sand. It's well above inflation rate increases. And to be perfectly frank, further above inflation rate increases to the rates and fees will probably be required in future years to enable debt reduction if we don't address the spending. And the trajectory has already been shown over the last 3 years where it's all going. At some point, you're going to hit your debt ceiling unless you just keep blindly increasing it, the threshold. And at that point, what do? You've got no money. You're going to have to go to the ratepayers to start funding the debt repayments. So, in my opinion, this council has failed to address the fundamental problems. And I know you get upset with me criticising it for tinkering around the edges, but it is, in my opinion, and probably the opinion of a number of people around the community who are frustrated with where council is going. So I'll be voting against this as I did in deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through Mayor. When we opened this part of the section today, there was a statement made, little to no capacity for any new requests. So I understand that. I guess one of my first questions before I continue is, with the renovations and the work we've had to do on the Richmond Library, and there was a conversation a while ago about whether we'd close it completely, and then I've heard we're keeping it open. I've never heard the conversation around any extra costs that are required for that. Has that been featured into this annual plan at all?
Mr. Kirby.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
I'll repeat the question. The library, Richmond Library, repairs, maintenance. The question is, there's been debate about the timing, the closure, the not closure, etc. The budget that was set for that project, is it still the budget that was originally approved? And if it isn't, is any increase allowed for in the annual plan?
At this stage, there's no increase expected. We're staying within budget, and the team are putting together information to me now to come back to you on the closure and whether it closes and what closes and what services will still be available during that period.
Thank you. But in terms of today's conversation, the budget remains the budget that we approved.
Thanks for that clarification. Got a little bit of a spiel that I wrote. Pardon? Oh, right. Technically, I may have had COVID and have a bit of a brain fog, and you're probably better off me reading it than trying to remember it, quite frankly. So I support the proposed plan of purchasing land at Seton Valley. As you would know, for my term that I've been on council, I've been quite in behind social infrastructure. So I definitely support the reinstatement of the 130K for our library services, because they are the hub of many of our communities. I am concerned that this annual plan seems to lack a few things. And I mean, I can't go down into details because it wasn't a confidential setting last week, but we know that there's things out there that we don't even have space holders in. So their opening statement around little no capacity, I feel very uncomfortable with that, knowing that we know stuff. I get that we went out to consult on the annual plan because it's quite different from what we proposed in the long-term plan. And I thank you for taking the community on that journey with us. I'm also mindful that for our communities, there are those who really, as already stated today, who have the financial capacity to want more, to get a higher level of service, and to be quite happy and comfortably able to pay more. But then there's the other part of my community that is already hurting and that is struggling to make ends meet every day. And that the implications of the 8.9% is going to actually affect their well-being considerably. So on that grounds, I'm not going to be supporting the resolution today.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further speakers before I look to put the resolution? Well, just before I come back to Deputy Mayor Bryant, I guess the comments I made in relation to the fees and charges kind of carry through to this conversation. And there has been a phenomenal amount of work. And I know people say tinkering around the edges, but if you actually add up all of the suggestions that were made to us by staff to cut, reduce, limit, it actually adds up to nearly $1 million a year. Chunks of 150,000, 300,000 around parks and reserves, added all together, bits and pieces here. By and large, based on community feedback, which is 100% the correct way to go about it, we declined to take up most of those opportunities. Now, that's not an insignificant change to the overall amount that we're requesting from the community. We've also directed, and I think one of the other key points to make, although we pass this resolution today and effectively say, well, not job done, but our part of this job is done, the CEO's job is only just starting, because we've set a direction of $1.4 million reduction in staff costs, which no one's mentioned today, including Councillor Greening. And I know tinkering around the edges is relative, because you could say, well, it should be 20 million, or it should be 5 million, or it should be 10 million. But it's not insignificant. Both the costs that we consulted on and then chose not cost savings not to take up, and I know it's incremental, but added up, it's quite a lot of money, plus the direction we've provided to the CEO to reduce staff costs. Both of those have significant implications going forward. And there's a lot of work to be done to implement that in a way that doesn't have the impact that we've also clearly stated of reducing services. So we are trying to have our cake and eat it, which I 100% understand why. So we want reductions, we want rate increases kept down, but we do not want to reduce the services. And that's pretty much the same message that the community provides us. Now, they have different views on all of the different components that make that up and what they'd like to see more spent on and what less spent on. But overall, that kind of mantra of less cost, same services, or in some cases, improved services, is kind of that consistent message that we have to grapple with. And that's why going forward, this is going to become harder and harder and harder. And I agree with Councillor Greening insofar as this is not going to become easier anytime soon. And some of that government policy direction will potentially make it more challenging, not so much in the short term, because if you look at the impact of keeping rates down or capping rates, or whichever way you want to look at it, in the short term, there are ways around it. Fees and charges, for example, selling assets, for example, that only gets you so far. And my personal view is, while it would be absolutely politically convenient if you think in 3 year or 1 year, or in the case of the October date, the next 6 months, to oppose things and not do it, yeah, our responsibility has to be to think medium and longer term. And the consequences for communities of not investing, as we can see in Three Waters, of not investing enough, whether that's in capital, operations, maintenance and upkeep, at some point it comes home to roost. And this annual plan 100% exemplifies that, because as already been pointed out, if you're connected to the PAN charge, it's going up substantially more than 10%. And that's the single biggest thing on most urban ratepayers' rates bill is the PAN charge, the one single item. That's wastewater provision. That's not going to be capped by any government rates capping. They are not going to cap investment in water, wastewater, stormwater or roading. What they will do, potentially, is cap social community investment seen as nice to have. That is the Tapawera centres, the Motueka swimming pool, the Wakefield Brightwater community investment. So this is going to get much harder, but the impact on ratepayers will actually not be as significant as it may sound, because the things that cost the most, both in debt the vast majority of our debt and the vast majority of this rate increase relate absolutely to core services, rubbish, roads, wastewater, stormwater, and water provision. That is the vast majority of both the debt and the rate increase. And that is going to continue to be a challenge. And part of that is because over a very long period of time, both central and local government have underinvested in all of those assets. So thinking medium and longer term and not just about the next 6 months or the next 12 months is 100% our responsibility. I really want to highlight the fact that there is a lot of work to do from the council leadership team through the council management right across the organisation to stick within the budgets we've set, which are tight, as Amy pointed out, for CEO Leone to work on achieving those $1.4 million worth of savings while maintaining services. And to ensure that, as Councillor Maru raised earlier, that where budgets are under pressure and issues arise, that the council is informed as early as possible and given as much opportunity to make decisions that may, and I'll use the word may advisedly, be able to mitigate any of those unforeseen issues so that we don't end up in the position of the next council starting with a deficit position before they even consider all those other challenges and issues. So I'll come across to Deputy Mayor Bryant for his right of reply. Well, I do just want to reiterate what he said earlier and thank all the staff that have been involved. There's been a phenomenal amount of work over the last 12 months. It's been exceptionally challenging. They have provided us with a whole range of opportunities to make incremental savings and reductions, as well as suggesting increases. We have chosen to take some of those, but we've chosen not to in a number of cases. So I'd just like to thank everyone, Alan, kind of for leading our overall team, Amy, for all the work you do, obviously Matt and all the people in the financial who crunch the numbers behind the scenes and provide us the opportunities to tweak this, change that, which we do quite often on the way through. So thank you to everyone. Stu.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. Not a lot more I can say, but I will say a few things just to follow on. So firstly, yes, we've had probably more workshops about this annual plan than we've had previously, quite a considerable number. And I'd have to say that by and large, any provisional decisions we've made at workshops or and the indications we've given have generally been well supported by the councillors around this table. Councillor Greening's consistently been a thorn in the side of all of us with opposing most things the rest of us support. So I think he's a lone voice out there with his view, and I think that's probably reflected around this table and in the community as well. He continually berates the Tapawera Community Hub. Already they've raised a fair proportion of their share of the cost of that building. And in the overall scheme of community facilities, it's going to be absolutely tiny cost in comparison to a lot of other projects we do and have done. So I really think he's really got a bee in his bonnet about Tapawera. I've got a bee in my bonnet to get it done now. More so, once again, very much a lone voice, hugely supported by the community out there. And I believe that we'll get that underway in this term of council, and if not, at least in the next term. So I think it's a little tiring when he continually raised that issue. So I'm going to raise the issue of stormwater enrichment. I think that's probably a bottomless pit that we could look at the money we're spending there and perhaps prioritise some of the Richmond money that's been spent hugely in proportion, out of proportion to what we spend in Tapawera, which is minuscule over things. So well and truly over that continually discouragement around the Tapawera Hub. Coming to some more positive things, I want to thank all the staff that have worked to bring this annual plan and all those facilities I've just been talking about. All the things Mayor Tim mentioned, once again, water, huge impact through here on all of the rates and the charges, and huge amount of time spent, but finally we're there. So I'd urge you all to support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. I will put the resolution via division. Rob.
Mayor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Butler. For. Councillor Dakey.
For.
Councillor Dowler.
For.
Councillor Ellis. For. Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Hill. For. Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Shellcrest.
For.
Councillor Maru.
For.
Councillor Mayling.
For.
Councillor McKenzie. For. Councillor Kinnamonth.
For.
Mayor King.
For.
Thank you.
Right. We will move on to the annual plan rates resolution. So the very important technicality of ensuring that we do everything in the right order and dot our I's and cross our T's. Margie.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. So you are right, after the adoption of the annual plan, we now need to do the rates resolution, which is effectively ensuring that we construct the rates and collect the revenue that we need to. There is one small change to the resolution that was in the agenda. A small mistake was noticed once the agenda had been distributed. So we're just bringing that up now. And essentially it was put into the resolution as 0.0336. It should have been 0.0366. So just bringing that to your attention and just letting you know that we have had an external legal review of the resolution as well, but happy to take any questions.
That is the most technical of technicalities. The fourth decimal point. But I imagine it probably adds up to quite a lot over the all the rates that we collect. Thanks very much, Margie. Open for Councillor Maley.
I'm happy to move this. This is the technical piece. If you get it wrong, it can come back and bite you, as I think it did for a water issue in Golden Bay many years. So it's very important that we do this because otherwise you haven't legally done it. So it's the final mechanical part, but it is technical. We can't get it wrong. So that's why I'm happy to move it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to second, but I do have a question, if I may, Maggie, and it just goes to what Councillor Mayland's just alluded to. We have checked, we have got all the rates, and because it must be getting quite a considerable number in the list, and it could be very easy, as did happen. We missed it once, and it becomes quite a challenge. So just want to check that we've triple checked it.
Have you triple checked, Maggie?
It has been triple checked, which is how that small error was picked up. It has had legal review, and you'll be pleased to know that actually 2 rates have dropped out of the rates resolution this year, which is very exciting.
Which are they, if I may ask?
The warm Tasman home loan rates, anybody who had that is now, this is the final year for the last few that were paying that rate, and one of the Hamama water rates also ceased.
Excellent. Two less rates.
Thank you. 2 less rates. Thank you, Councillor Greening.
Thank you. Look, fully appreciate this needs to be done procedurally, as Councillor Mayling pointed out, once Council has made its decision. But as I have not supported the direction of this plan, I will be unusually abstaining, because I think ethically it would be wrong for me to support this, having opposed it. I do want to just point out, because some comments were made earlier, $1.4 million was offered at the very end of deliberations, much to the surprise of many councillors. Fully supported it, but the problem was it was not sufficient, and staff numbers which were kept at 400 were projected to go up to 415, I think, which happened to coincide with the offered reduction. So no meaningful reduction, and that's my frustration, hence why it was reported in the media and why I said it, that actually the reductions need to be larger than 1.4 million. And I think at the time I was projecting something along the lines of 4 million, which equates to, if you look at the average salary of TDC, probably around 50 FTEs. And the reason for that driver was
Councillor Greenie, just to clarify, so just we are speaking to this technical report, so try and limit your commentary to it, particularly given you're abstaining on voting on it.
I'm just responding to the points that were made earlier.
That was in relation to a previous report. So just because, just because those comments were made in a previous discussion doesn't really mean you can start relitigating the conversation. This is very much the technicality.
I'm just clarifying. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything further? This is very much the technicalities of wrapping up the previous conversations. It's the most important mark to get 100% accurate. That is absolutely correct. Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, can I just clarify? $4.09 for 1 cubic metre of water supplied. Do we know what the previous amount was? That seemed like a lot per cubic metre. I thought it was something about $2 or $3 a cubic metre.
Three. Maggie, do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe it's around $3. Well, Matt thinks $3.64. Who's a Richmond ratepayer?
Yeah, I think it's 360, 370. Yes. Okay, thank you. I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against.
Can my abstain be recorded, please?
Yes, I think yes, he does wish to. Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes the key business for the meeting. I'd just like to reiterate my thanks to council staff, but I also want to thank those of you around the table. It has been a massive amount of work. I realise there's a range of opinions and views on pretty much every component of this plan. And I'm sure there are things in it that people may prefer not to have been in it, things that they would have liked to see in it that are not, and that may well reflect both their personal view and also the view of the community that they represent. We are not alone in how challenging this is. And if you look around the country in terms of the rate increases that lots of communities are facing, we are by no means at the higher end of that. We are neither at the lower end. Given we're a unitary council and we have those responsibilities that both the regional councils and territorial authorities around the country have, I do firmly believe that we've worked through this constructively, positively, that we've considered community feedback where we have suggested reducing services to try and make some savings, and that feedback has been quite strong, and we've reflected that in the final number. So for everyone who's contributed their views around the table over the last 12 months, I really appreciate the amount of time and effort that you've all put into it, the amount of detail that we've gone into and drilled down. And I know it's tempting at times to take this very high level view of just a big number and go and achieve that. But I think the fact that we've taken the time to go through pretty much every part of council, we've made really clear direction and then ultimately decisions to ensure that, like I said at the start, that balance between developer pays, contributions around capital investment, fees and charges, user pays approach, and then not the last cab, but the catch-all of the general rate that picks up pretty much everything else we wish to achieve on behalf of the community. And that is ultimately the source of funding that fills in areas where it can't be achieved elsewhere. But I just would like to reiterate that water, wastewater, stormwater, roading and rubbish are the key drivers and have been pretty much for the entire time that I've been involved in council decision making. The figures around things like Motueka swimming pools and Tapawera hubs and originally the Richmond swimming pool, Saxon Field investment, when you aggregate them up, they seem like a very big number because they kind of come in this big lumpy chunk. It's easy to see, it's easy to kind of feedback. And yes, some people don't utilise it and see it as a nice to have, but the community is so much better off with the investment that the council has made now over 25 years in those facilities. It is kind of hard to imagine living in this region with no Saxons Field, no Richmond swimming pool, no Upper Murtry Community Centre, no Tākea Community Centre. I can't actually think how it would work. All the things that go on at Saxon's Field that wouldn't happen if someone hadn't made a decision 20 years ago to firstly purchase the land and then invest what collectively will be tens, if not approaching $100 million in all of those facilities that sit on that bit of land. So again, I really appreciate the fact that everyone has taken the longer term view. And whether that's the longer term view should be we should do less, cost less, pay less and borrow less, or whether your longer term view is we need to invest at least enough to ensure the community both has the infrastructure it needs, water, wastewater, stormwater, roads, the basic things, but also that the community is a place that people really enjoy to live in. And for a lot of those people whose resources are limited, the things we provide to them for their rates, so the parks, the reserves, the playgrounds, the swimming pools, are things that they absolutely rely on every day. And largely the cost of utilising those things once we've invested in them is not high. So the barrier to access is generally kept reasonably affordable. So look, on balance, I think we've arrived at as reasonable a place as we could in the circumstances. And that's largely down to the massive contribution that you've all made around the table. So just thank you very much.
And yes, we have a workshop that's scheduled for 1. I'm wondering if we can bring it forward.
I think I've already asked Robin to check that is possible. So hopefully that will be able to be done post a break for morning tea. All right, thank you. If there's nothing further, I will put I won't put anything because there's nothing there to put. I can just close the meeting and we can all go home. So excellent. I will do the karakia, yes. Kia hiki te kororo, kia pātia, kia mama te manawa o te tangata, kia u ke te ara mō tātou o ora nei, ko rongo, ko ke runga, kia tina, hui e, tai kia e.